Hey friend, welcome to Authentic Performance, the podcast. My name is Nat and I'm your host. At Authentic Performance, our mission is to provide education and advocacy for all athletes, developing awareness surrounding identity, purpose, and health, so athletes can live well beyond their sport. Today, I'm so excited to share a conversation I had with Cole Hamilton, who played baseball at Linn Benton Community College, Oregon State University, and for the Washington Nationals. He shares what life was like playing for a competitive D1 school, balancing academics, athletics, and a social life. We also talk about dealing with injury and what life looks like now after baseball. If you're interested in knowing what it's like to play at the highest level of college baseball and professionally, this episode is for you. Now here's Cole to share his story. Okay, well, Cole, welcome to the podcast. It's good to have you here. To start things off, do you want to tell everyone just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me here today, Nat. My name's Cole Hamilton. I'm from Salem, Oregon, born and raised, and I played baseball at Oregon State and had a short stint in professional baseball with the Washington Nationals, and then decided to hop into the real world and figure out who I was. So here we are today, and I lived in Arizona for 2 years, 1 year in Phoenix, 1 year in Glendale. Now I live in Bend, Oregon, and just navigating through life.
Yeah, awesome. Well, to start off with the whole athletic career, can you talk a little bit about your experience as a junior college athlete? Because you did do that first for a little bit. So what was that like, especially being kind of local-ish to where you grew up, like not super far away? What was that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually played at Linn Benton Community College, which my oldest brother Austin also played at, so that was pretty cool. And they had actually cut the baseball program. His last year was the last year of the baseball program. And then I went to Western Oregon directly out of high school and really wanted to go to Oregon State. And the head coach at Linn Benton, Ryan Gibson, uh, won a national championship with the Beavs in '07. And so I figured it was a great opportunity to go and continue my baseball career, because at Western Oregon, I ended up quitting baseball, hated it. And then it was just a great entry back into baseball and getting back into shape and also living the junior college life. But it was tough. I would say it was tough in terms of baseball because it's different than the standards and expectations are a little different than, at a university level. And you have more responsibility, I would say, on your own because you don't have necessarily the same academic advisors, same amount of coaches to kind of keep you on a straight and narrow. So it you grow up a lot in junior college, needless to say, or you don't, and like you get weeded out. Depending, I mean, you've seen it too, probably with girls, but it's like you really have to have aspirations and push yourself because there's not a lot of people there to kind of give you a kick in the butt when you need it.
Yeah. What about like being there for kind of a shorter amount of time? Because like I know, well, I guess you weren't at Oregon State necessarily like your whole time, so there was like that was only part of your career too. But like typically people who go to junior college, like you're not there for a long time, as opposed to say people that started at Oregon State and just went all the way. So like, was it hard to transition from like one program to another in such a short amount of time, or did you kind of like that change?
I honestly loved the change because when I got to Linn Benton, it was really all about baseball. I mean, academics, obviously, you're a student athlete, right? It's student hyphen athlete for a reason because you have to excel in the classroom in order to play. But with Coach Gibson, we really had an emphasis on getting our body and mind right to go on the field and succeed. And so he would put us through a bunch of mental trainings also to where, because baseball is like 90% mental, right? It's a big mind game. And so that was a huge transition for me because before it was all just about baseball, 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 baseball. And you never really learn about the mental aspect to become a good player in baseball, especially as a catcher, because you see the whole field, you're controlling everybody. you have to know how to communicate to each pitcher because they respond differently to how you talk with each of them, which is in going to lead to either a crappy performance for them or a great performance. And so that transition I personally loved. In junior college was the best time of my life. Like some of my best friends I met in junior college. And it was a huge change for me that I went from hating baseball at a university at Western Oregon, which is Division II, and then at Linn Benton just fell right back in love with it. And I couldn't stop playing. Like that was the best time of my life and definitely the right decision. God definitely had an impact on that decision and led me to the right place. Plus, being 30 minutes from home was nice because my family could come and visit and watch all the games, and that was huge. Not that Western Oregon was any further, but
Yeah.
it was just nice being close to home and somewhere that my oldest brother had played. I had gone and watched him play, and I'm like, man, like I want to play in college too. So to wear cooler uniforms than he had was sweet. Still repping the same name. That was a lot of fun though.
Yeah. What was the recruiting process like for you? Like with that much change, I guess, like both in high school and then like at the junior college, because then obviously you went on to Oregon State. So what was it like at different stages? Was that like a stressful thing for you, or did you kind of enjoy the process?
What's kind of funny, Nat, is that in high school, I told myself I would never play at a junior college. I just knew I wanted to play in college, but I wanted to be better than my brothers, because I have Austin, who's now going to be, or Austin is 30, Tanner's 28. Like, I was like, I'm going to be better than my brothers. I can't go to the same place they went, even though Austin played at Western Oregon, and that's where I went. And then Linn Benton and Austin played there. But in high school, I only had one Division I offer, unofficially, to Washington State. And so I was like, okay. And Western Oregon had offered me a good scholarship to play. And so I accepted it. Plus, they had the academics that I wanted, or the major I wanted to major in. And so I just thought that that would be a good fit. And then after the fall term was when I stepped away from baseball because it was more baseball than academics. And I knew I wanted to go into medicine at that time. And so I had to step away and focus on academics. And then I actually emailed Andy Jenkins, who was a assistant coach at Oregon State, when I wanted to get back in and asked if they had any walk-on spots. And he said that they didn't, but to contact Coach Gibson at Linn Benton. And I called Coach Gibson, and he said, yeah, we have 5 catchers, but, I'll come down and we'll talk and I'll take you on. So that was pretty much my recruiting process. And then when I played summer baseball with the Corvallis Knights, I ended up getting drafted that summer because we had a really good year at Linn Benton. We went 42-4 and 29-1 in conference. I don't remember any personal stats, just team stats, because we walked on the field and knew we would win. And so I was getting calls and stuff from smaller Division Is, but I told Coach Gibson, like, Oregon State or bust. And so after I got drafted, it's kind of funny. I was on the bus going to Kelowna with the Knights, and it's like a 14-hour drive. And I had saw that I got drafted on Twitter, and I was like, well, that's crazy. And then I got a call from Scott Ramsey, the Washington Nationals scout. And then my next phone call was from Pat Bailey, who was the interim head coach at that time at Oregon State. And he's like, we're taking you, blah, blah, blah. And that was pretty much it. And he sat me down in his office. It would be fall time now at Linn Benton. And he was giving me a spiel, trying to get me to commit. And I said, Bill, it's like, you don't have to speak anymore, dude. Like, I'm coming here. And so my recruiting process is probably different than most former Division I athletes or current Division I athletes, because, there's 4 and 5-star athletes who have offers from all these schools, and that's a tough choice. But for me, I already knew where I was going.
Yeah. What were the main things like that really drew you to Oregon State? I mean, obviously it was close to home, but what were some of the other things that you just loved about that school specifically?
Baseball, that they have always had a really good baseball program, and just the chances of signing a professional contract after you leave Oregon State, because it takes a certain caliber of player to be on the team there, and also the opportunity to play because Adley Rutschman had just got drafted by the Orioles, and so it was Troy Claunch and then me, and we had a couple other freshman catchers coming in, and I knew that just based on skill and also age and experience that I was going to have a good opportunity to be a starter and help the team win games. And so I was like, it's just a perfect fit.
Yeah. So now talking more about like your time at Oregon State, what was kind of the schedule like, maybe almost for like people that are like, what even does Division I baseball look like? What was your, schedule? What was the academic load versus baseball? Like what were you doing during your time there?
Yeah, so this was right, like they encouraged all their athletes, if possible, to have online classes, just easier for practices and honestly easier like to get used to it for when season comes, because obviously you can't attend in-person classes like you could in the fall because we're on the road a lot. And so typically during the fall we'd have practice Monday through Saturday, and you'd get Sundays off, and you'd have weights 4 times a week, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you'd have conditioning on Wednesday, so like a rest day but not a rest day, if you know what I mean. And so that would typically be at 6 a.m. Weights would be at 6 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then you'd have conditioning around like 8 or 9, not so early. And they would go for about an hour and a half. And then you'd go across the street to the Valley Center and eat breakfast, which was the best part. You could make whatever you wanted, omelets, smoothies, you had it all. And so you'd go eat breakfast. You'd go back to your house and take a nap, 30-minute to an hour nap. We're getting very detailed here, Nat. Just so
Love it.
people understand like
Yeah.
what it's
No.
really like, and being realistic.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to the field. I'd be there about 11:30, and then practice. We won't get into that just for NCAA details, but you'd have your practice, and then you'd go to uh, dinner after for, I don't know, probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then you'd go to study hall for 2 hours. And then you'd go home, you'd go to bed, and then rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Did you like the structure of it, or was it a lot to not have a lot of free time, I guess? Like, I mean, that's very typical of student athletes at most levels. Like your sport takes up a lot of time, but was that structure good, or was it kind of hard to deal with?
For me personally, the structure was awesome because I needed structure, or else like I would slack off a little bit. And so having your schedule already pre-made, like, hey, this is when you're going to be here, 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 all that stuff was great for me because, and my teammates too, honestly. And like we knew the time that we had to hang out after study hall. And if you finished your homework early, because you would go to study hall and you couldn't sit with your team. So it was like all the sports teams, and they would split you up, and you'd have an advisor at your table. And at the beginning of the week, you'd have to tell her what your assignments are and when it's due. And so you'd literally turn in an assignment, have to show your advisor. She would mark it off, and you couldn't leave study hall until all of it was done. So if you wanted to have more free time, you just get your homework done faster, and then you could show her that you did all the assignments and they didn't have to go. So that way you could go like have dinner with a couple of your teammates or whatever it is. And then if you um, have like, I think it was above like a 3.5 or so, then the coaches trusted you that you didn't need to go to study hall. And so you could do your homework on your own, but you had to maintain that GPA. And so my senior year, I didn't have study hall at all, just because they're like, okay, this kid can do it at home. And that's most for most upperclassmen, is that they really just, when you're a freshman or transfer in, they have that regimented for you so you can get in the routine of just doing your homework at that time and getting it done. Not saying that it always happens like that. There were some late Sunday nights, but submitting
As
discussion posts.
as there are. part, yeah.
But I really liked the structure, and it honestly carried forward into my senior year in terms of academics. Baseball stayed the same. Obviously, like you have practice and weights and conditioning, all that stuff. But in terms of academics, study hall really helped. And so it kind of changed the student athlete I was, you could say.
Yeah. What kind of relationships were formed there? I mean, as you're spending a lot of time with your teammates, like, I mean, did you really meet people outside of baseball at all? Because, like, obviously you were mostly doing online classes where, like, some students, when you go to college, like, you meet people in, like, your classes and stuff, or were your best friends kind of, like, in that bubble with you doing all the baseball stuff?
My best friends were definitely in that bubble. Like I met more people in junior college just from attending classes than I did at Oregon State. Um, yeah, thinking back, I really don't have any friends that weren't on my baseball team that I met at Oregon State. If I didn't already know them from junior college or from, growing up 45 minutes away. So yeah, all my friends were formed in that bubble. And we're still very close today. Like I actually just went to Andy Armstrong's wedding in October and saw some of my old teammates and stayed with my old roommate. So it, they're going to be lifetime friendships.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about injury because I know we were just kind of talking about this. Like you've got some experience with dealing with injury, kind of like coming back from that. So can you just give a little rundown of like your experience with injury in college and kind of how you navigated that with playing, baseball at such a high level and then also just for so much of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. So my freshman year, like I spoke of earlier, was drafted by the Nationals in the 23rd round. And so I was like, awesome. That put me on the radar. And going into sophomore year, I was like, I'm going to hopefully perform well again and, make some money so I could help pay for some of my parents. And that was, as like growing up, you're like, oh, I want to be a professional athlete, right? And so after that happened, I was like, okay, this is achievable. This is awesome. And in the fall, I was dealing with some elbow issues. And so I didn't throw much and catch much, just preparing for the season. And I was playing a lot of first base. And then after winter break, we had scout day, like probably early February, and I had 15 teams there to watch me and one of our pitchers. And you're like, okay, it's go time to show them what I'm made of. And then I threw down to second and felt three pops in my elbow and a bunch of paresthesias to my ring and pinky finger. And I was like, oh, there it goes. And that's when I knew I tore my UCL, or your ulnar collateral ligament, on my throwing arm. And I had just committed to Oregon State in the fall, and all this just starts spiraling in my head. Like, okay, like you hear about kids all the time who were committed to the school they wanted to go to, and then they just drop them, right? And so I was very scared, and that was a hard phone call to make to Coach Bailey at Oregon State. And he's very God willing, strong Christian, and he could probably just hear how scared I was in my voice. And he's like, Colt, God's got us, dude. This is a surgeon you're going to go to, and he's going to take care of it, and we'll see you next year. And so that just relieved all my stress with that injury. But at the time, like initially, because that was out of it, but then it was like, okay, rehab starts. I don't get to play baseball at all this year. I'm our team leader. Like, how can I still lead and be a part of the team when I'm not playing, and I'm not going to be the one going through the trenches with these guys, and they could see me differently. And so that was really hard on me mentally, and that's when I wouldn't say you become like depressed, but you just are kind of lost because you're out of your normal routine. You're just showing up to the field and just you're present physically, but mentally you're not there at all. And that was a difficult time. And then at Oregon State, it was kind of difficult the whole time because UCL injury, rehab, come back. First year at Oregon State, we play 14 games. COVID happens, season's canceled. And then we come into my senior year, baseball wise, um, and I had just become the starter about 15 games in, and I was catching a midweek game, and I blocked a ball off of my thumb and broke my trapezium in my hand, and then that ended that season for me. And that was the hardest one because I felt like I was kind of pushed away from the team. You no longer travel. I couldn't throw the ball, so catching bullpens, like I would have to ask guys to throw the ball back for me, which sometimes would be a challenge for them. They'd be like, why do I got to do that? And I'm like, bro, just please do it so I can catch and whatnot. And you don't like. There was times where my roommate Kyler would go eat with the guys, and like I wasn't invited. I just felt like I wasn't a part of the team that I had led, and just became a big time part of and a big leader. And so mentally, that really, I struggled with that really bad. And we actually talked about it, Kyler and I, because he didn't understand because he broke his jaw before, but it was a quick turnaround and he was back. And he's like, bro, I didn't realize that you were struggling that hard because we, as athletes, we tend to keep everything in and try to cope with it. Like, you don't want anyone to know what's going on. And there wasn't really any outlets to where you could go and talk to someone who would just sit and listen and not give opinions or, be like, oh yeah, I've been there. And probably like I've done for you. So I apologize for that. But just it's tough because you dive into the mental aspect of how to perform well in your sport, but you never imagine being hurt and not being able to be able to perform maybe ever again. Like I never played another game again. And so it's just one small injury could just end it, and you don't prepare for that mentally because you don't ever see that transpiring.
Yeah, and I think everyone's story is so different. Like, I remember talking to my mom, like, right after I got hurt, and I was like, this sucks. Like, this is awful. I don't even know, like, who I am. I don't know what to do. And she's like, I get it. I get it. And I'm like, no, you don't. And, like, it was a really, like, I'm super close with my mom, love her to death. Like, she wanted to help so badly. And I think so many people do. But when you're in it, like, you feel like no one else can understand anything that you're going through because it is such a unique situation. Like, your injury is very different than my injury, even though there's some, similarity with like how things transpired after or like whatever with different athletes. Like, you can see similarities, but it's like when you're in it, you feel like you are the only one that is going through it in the world, which in some ways is kind of true. Like, it's all very unique to you, but it's hard to have people try to understand when you feel like they can't, I guess.
Yeah,
Which it's a hard balance too, because you want people to be there for you, but you don't always know how to let people help when, like you said, like, you don't need advice. Sometimes you need to just like let it kind of suck a little bit and just like
yeah,
it's gonna be tough, but there's not necessarily like a fix or an answer right off the bat, especially when you're in the midst of it. I think it's hard to really.
100%. I'd say the hardest thing for me was that I never got called into skipper's office, and he never just was like, "Hey, how are you doing with this?" It was like almost like, "Okay, scratch that guy off the roster. Who's next?" type of deal. And we were in season, which baseball at Oregon State is taken very seriously as it should be, and that just hurt me a lot. And like never was like, "Hey, how you doing? Like, can I help you at all? Like, what's going on? Do you need to talk to anybody? Do you need?" And that's how we had a couple guys get injured. As when you have a team of 45 guys, like you're not all going to stay healthy. And that's what other guys mentioned as well. Was like, I never got asked, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? What's your outside life look like now?" And because you have a lot more time on your hands when you're not going. Like they would leave for 14 days at times, and you don't see the guys for 14 days when you're used to seeing them almost 365. So that was tough.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, like you said, like feeling like you're not a person almost like a like someone who actually goes through stuff like
Yeah,
instead of just a number on the roster, I think is like I felt a little bit of that too with my like junior college. Like I would go tell my coach like, "Hey, I'm going to skip open gym because like no one talks to me at open gym and I just sit there and I do nothing. I'm gonna go do my rehab like during that time." And because I like couldn't be there because it was like no one is asking how things are going. Like everyone just is like, she's out, like who knows what's gonna happen next. Like
yeah,
it's such an isolating thing, which is tough because you're already going through like one of the hardest things you could be going through as an athlete, so then to have that
100%.
mental
Yeah,
mental battle is even worse.
and they keep it like I feel like when after you get injury or after you suffer from an injury or get injured, your teammates almost don't want to dive into that and keep it pretty superficial. And it's like, bro, if you were injured, I would drive over to your house, take you to dinner, and ask how things are going, you know?
Yeah, that's
So,
definitely hard.
yeah.
um so then can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the nationals and kind of what transpired after, um and just what that whole process was even like at all?
Yeah. So, obviously, leading up to the draft, I was injured, but I was talking to multiple teams throughout the season. And then after you get injured, it kind of dwindles down. And so the Nationals I was still on their radar, and I was on the Diamondbacks' radar, which ironically is the scouts are father and son, both former catchers. And so leading into the draft, he's like Scott with and Dan with the Diamondbacks. They were like, we know you're injured, but we know what you can do, and so we're both interested. We don't know if we're going to take you in the draft, and the MLB draft is 3 days long, and so I knew I wasn't going day one because that's obviously like very very good players, and you're making millions of dollars. And so I scratched that off, and he's like, possibly day two, day three. And so they would both call me at the end of the night and say, it didn't happen today, but possibly tomorrow. Because how it works is there's regional scouts, and they go to the organization and they have a big meeting, and each scout pretty much puts the players that they want to sign or think that would benefit the organization, and then the head honchos in the organization make the decision. And so that's how it works. And so after the third day, Scott calls me midday and he's like, we are not going to take you, but we want to sign you as a free agent as soon as the draft ends. And the free agent cap for money is 20,000. And so I said, absolutely, I'll take it because I had earned my degree. I was like, I don't really want to go get more in debt, student loan wise. So yeah, I'll take the opportunity. But I said on two contingencies. I have a workout plan and I have a nutrition plan. And he says, absolutely, I'll relay the message. And so I was on a plane, and it was probably 2 weeks later, going to West Palm Beach, Florida, where their spring training is. And I was only there for 3 weeks. I didn't have a workout plan and I didn't have a nutrition plan. And I just felt like a team manager. I was at practice fields feeding machines, and I would go do my rehab for 30 minutes in the morning, and I would just felt like team manager, literally shagging BP, feeding machines, and just being a team guy like I had been already for 7 months at Oregon State. And I was like, maybe I need to look into other things and potentially get out of baseball and start my career because I've only played 15 games in 3 years. And so that's what happened. I was just fell out of love with baseball and didn't enjoy it anymore. But it was still a cool experience. It makes you think back to like what would have happened if you signed when you were healthy before you blew your elbow out. But you can't. Hindsight's 2020. You can't go down that rabbit hole. And I don't know if I wish things would have turned out differently for me, but I am a Christian and know that God has a weird way of showing you what your life is meant to be, what he wants you to do in your life. And sometimes as an athlete, it's like, this isn't what I want at all. So like, why did it happen? But, you come to realms with it and you're all right with it.
Yeah. No, I think that's the only thing that can really get you through most of the time when like something like that happens or like things don't go your way is like trusting that it's for a bigger purpose than what you know. Cause like I mean, even just like talking before, like I was like, God, I get it. Like, you don't want me to play basketball, but like, I really want to. So, like, I'm going to keep trying. Like, I'm going
Yeah.
to, go play club basketball, get hurt again. Try to play an intramural team, like, get hurt again. So, it's like, sometimes I think we need a couple, like, nudges before we really, like, understand that, like, it's time. But even
Yeah.
then, you don't really necessarily know, like, why, until maybe longer down the road or maybe even not at all, but I think it's at least a little bit easier to like process that when you think about kind of the grand scheme of things and like what it can be in the future. And
So,
is there any way now that you like still like to be involved in baseball? Like, do you like watching it, staying around it, or has that like relationship kind of changed since all of those, tough things happen in baseball?
yeah, I'd say that relationship has changed, but for the better. Like when I was playing, I hated watching professional baseball. Just because I would like look at the catchers and compare myself and be like, oh, like I can perform better than that type of deal. And I'm actually a lot bigger of a fan than I was before. So I really enjoy watching baseball. And a lot of my friends outside of the baseball world who don't understand it, like I go to games with them. Like in Arizona, I would go to games and they just ask me questions, and I could explain the game. And I haven't, I won't ever play adult like league because that would just be way too boring for me.
Yeah.
And I will coach when I have children one day, and we're going to be a really good team. I'm going to have them whipped up. But in terms of my relationship with baseball, it has changed for the better because I'm a bigger fan and enjoy watching it with family now who don't really understand the game. Besides my brothers and my dad, but my uncles and cousins and stuff, they didn't really play much. So it's fun to kind of be the brain for them, and they ask questions of strategy because it is a chess match. But
Mhm.
I still
Yeah.
enjoy baseball. It's not like I hate the game.
Yeah. What about like just like working out, nutrition? I know like it was pretty rigid for you like at Oregon State, like you had, like that was all
Mm.
mapped out for you. So how did that kind of change as now like, obviously you're in a different season of life. Like what does that look like now?
Yeah, I mean, I still work out, not like I used to, not as rigorous, because I struggled with that, honestly, after my career ended. I was like, how do I work out to be healthy and like the way I look and not kill myself? Because I no longer need to be 200 pounds and try and hit home runs and, be able to perform. So it was like finding the right body weight that I feel good at to where I can get up and down the mountains hunting, and the most important, and
Yeah.
to play golf. Um, and to also just take care of my body because I'm in excavation now and it's hard on your body. So you have to, keep the stretching routines, keep working out, keep using muscles, or else I'll get hurt doing that too. So I'd probably work out right now. I try to go at least 3 times a week. The diet thing, like I make a lot of meals at home. I don't eat out much. But it's not like I'm not counting macros. I'm not like my brother Tanner, who's a bodybuilder and like watches everything he consumes. Um, I'm just trying to stay happy and keep like a good body image for myself and be able to do the activities I like I mentioned, hunting, fishing, and golfing.
Yeah. No, it can be a really interesting transition like when you do go from like such a structured and like disciplined, you know, um, workout routine or nutrition or whatever to then like getting to kind of figure it out on your own, which is, I think it's kind of cool to get to do that because then you get to enjoy it for a different reason, I think. Like when well, I guess my nutrition and like even workouts and stuff wasn't as structured at like the junior college level, but even like exiting that, like now the way that I eat, like I get to be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna eat because it makes me feel good, and then I can go do the things that I love to do, like not necessarily like practice basketball for 4 hours a day, but like just spending time with friends and family, and like, you know, now I'm a student, so like fueling my body so that I can go to class and, do all of those things. But I think
Absolutely.
it's cool how it changes a little bit, but you still get to hopefully have a positive relationship, just a different one that depends on kind of the season of life that you're in.
100%. And it's hard. The hardest thing for me was going from eating so much food to no longer needing that caloric intake, right? Because you, like you said, a 4 hour practice, like you're burning so many calories plus your weights in the morning. Like you're just inhaling food. And if we were to do that now, like I'd probably be like 400 pounds. And so
Uh,
my body was so used to eating so much food to where I had to train myself like, hey, you don't need to eat 3,500 calories a day, dude. Like, you'll be good at 2,000 or just under, and you'll
yeah.
maintain weight. And it's kind of crazy though. We have all this knowledge, right, on nutrition and exercise and know what it takes. And it was hard to go from such a structured environment to now you're like, okay, I need to get up and go do this, or else it's not going to get done. Like, I'm not meeting 40 other dudes there, right? Like, it's just going to be me. And you're working out in a public gym now, too, which is a little different, a big change up. Um, so that was tough for me to kind of jump over that hurdle. But you always, like, once you're an athlete and have it in your brain, like, you can do it, right? Like, you've gone through some tough workouts and hard times. So it's like, okay, I can do this. It's just got to get back into the routine and create that routine.
Yeah. Did you like enjoy like weights and stuff in college, or was that just kind of like something you did just because it was part of the routine, or did you like enjoy that piece of it at all?
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed lifting weights a lot, especially with the guys. I was always the loudest one. You could ask my teammates. They knew every time, I walked in. I really enjoyed weights, and it's kind of ironic. Like we'd be going through some very difficult workouts, and I would always thank our strength coach just because he's making you better mentally and physically. Uh, so I really enjoyed weights a lot. The hardest transition for me lifting weights was going from, like I said, being there with your team and going through hell together with your team, and then now it's like you're by yourself, and so you have to figure out what music you like what gets you motivated on your own versus just like being there to improve your physical condition and stay in shape for your teammates so you can perform.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like what it's like with just like the social aspect too. Like I know you're close with your family and stuff, cuz but you mentioned like all this time spending with teammates and stuff. Like what does it look like after college and baseball, like having, friends, or like going out and doing stuff? Like how do you have like community kind of outside of that very structured, like people that you see every single day for, several hours of the day? What does it look like now?
Yeah, it's a lot different, I'll tell you that, because we most of us live in different states. A lot of my teammates are from California and Washington, but we maintain contact, via phone, and we FaceTime and we'll text each other. And like I said, Armstrong just got married, and so there was 8 of us there, and we hung out for a bit. And I went early to hang out with Kyler. I spent 5 days with them, which was awesome. But when we see each other, or even when we talk, we don't talk every day, but it's like you don't skip a beat. It's just life happened and you moved away and now you're doing different things, but you'll always remember spending that time with them and, going through hard times. But I definitely don't see them as often as I would like. Uh, and I'm sure they feel the same way just because college is a blast. You have best time of your life, and you get to go see new places with them, and we'll always be friends and always find time to meet up with each other when finances and everything's right, when it's feasible for everybody. So we maintain contact, but it's not like we're seeing each other all the time. It'd probably be different if they were just down the road, but
Okay, well, I want to give you a chance if you have anything else you want to add before I kind of wrap things up with the last question.
I would just tell viewers that, and future athletes, if they're listening to this, to wonder what it's like to be a collegiate athlete, that it is a full-time job and you can't be half committed to it, and to start reading books on mental health and how to dive into becoming a good player, not just physically and in terms of your position in your sport or whatever it is, to dive into breathing and being right mentally, because you'll be able to perform much better on the field and in all realms. So just pay attention to your mental health and don't be afraid to seek help if you need to talk to anybody.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so the last question, everyone gets to answer this one on the podcast. What does it
Okay.
look like for you to live authentically?
Just be genuine, be true to myself, and one thing that stuck with me that I learned at Oregon State is be good at telling the truth and taking the truth. And so I'm a blunt person, and some people now in the excavation world don't enjoy that, because if they mess something up, they know. And if I mess something up, I want them to tell me too, So I'd say just being true to myself, genuine, be genuine.
Yeah.
That's about it, honestly.
Awesome.
Don't kid yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good answer. Well, thank you so much for doing this and just sharing your experiences in all things sports. It's been a pleasure to get to hear from you. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nat. It's good to finally make this happen.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We would love to hear what you found valuable in this episode. So please DM us on Instagram at Authentic Performance or leave a review. They're super, super helpful for us. We're so thankful that you're on this journey with us and want to invite you to be a part of the Authentic Performance fam. You can check out more of how we're supporting athletes at theauthenticperformance.com. Also, let us know what you want to hear on the podcast next or who you want to hear. We appreciate your feedback and want to give you the best possible resources and support. In the meantime, think about how you can live authentic.